We all came here today from across the country to be a part of this conversation of how to lead the way on a new approach to American immigration. We all came here yesterday to be a part of conversations on the Hill with members of Congress to lead the way on a new approach to American immigration. And today at lunch, we are going to be hearing one of the most important, most critical leaders of this debate, Senator Thom Tillis.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for the kind introduction. I usually cut introductions short, but I was having so much fun hearing that, I decided to let that one go on. No, but thank you all very much, and shout out to all the constituents we have here from North Carolina. God bless you. Look, I better be brief because I don't want to stand in front of 250 people that are about to have lunch. But also the reason I want to be brief is that this problem, although it's been vexing and unsolved for 30 years, should not have to take a long time to start making progress. The way that we do that is to do it differently. I'm not going to use the Albert Einstein definition of insanity, although I think if we move forward and we try to do it in the way that it's been done in the past, and I mean the full spectrum of immigration reform, then I do believe you'll produce the same result. If we join a chorus of people that says all of us or none of us in a single legislative action, it will be none of them. If we recognize that there's a method to solving this problem, and if we remain disciplined, you need to remain persistent. We all need to be patient, but we need to do things differently. And if we do, I'm convinced we can get it done. Now, I was a management consultant at Price Waterhouse, and I learned a lot about methodology. In fact, taught it at one point in my career before I became partner. So I believe everything that has had a lot of attention focused on it, if you go back and look at what worked, what didn't work, how it actually moved forward, you can learn a lot from it. You can build a methodology for anything. And so, I don't know, my staff looked at me. They look at me weird anyway because I use a lot of technical language and management consulting language. But it was sometime last year, my legislative director, Courtney, where are you? She's in the back of the room. I went to Courtney and I said, Courtney, I want a methodology for immigration reform. I want to go back and I want to look at every effort over the past couple of decades, understand what they were trying to accomplish and why they failed. Then I want to understand the immigration problem as a whole, whether it's work visas and guest worker programs, the current visa program, and the illegally present population. And let's start thinking about how we actually solve this problem. But let's do it in a way to where we can create transactional, what I refer to as transactional bipartisanship. Pair things together that get reasonable-minded Democrats and reasonable-minded Republicans to come together and say, we were finally going to have the courage to stand down the extreme polar opposites in our parties and produce an outcome. And it was last year that I was convinced that whether Secretary Clinton was elected or Donald Trump was elected, that we would be where we are today. Because I think it's fair to say that the DACA program was going to be challenged in the courts, and it was likely going to either be ended through the courts or ended by the president. If Clinton won through the courts, and if Trump won, probably through administrative action. And so we started working last year on what would that look like? What would a reasonable, compassionate, sustainable, fiscally sound solution for the DACA population look like? And everybody immediately jumps to, but what about this, 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 and this? I said, those are problems that we need to solve, but it's not the problem we should first solve. We should solve the one to where any reasonable-minded person should understand we should do what's right by the children who came here to this country through a decision made by their adult parent or a guardian. And let's just stay focused on that. And let's also figure out what we have to do to make that bipartisan transaction occur, which brings into focus border security. Now, what we also decided is you have to take a look at, as ideas get introduced into the Congress, what's the best way to get focus on the core issues of a bill? And that's why I decided the only thing I wanted in the bill that we filed, which is called the Succeed Act, was about the DACA population. It wasn't about border security, which I think we can build a humanitarian argument for it. We can build a homeland security argument for it, and I'm going to spend just a minute on that. But I wanted to look at something that I thought would make the not usual suspects of the Republican Party take a second look at this. And I think that they have. And I thank my colleague, James Langford, for coming on the bill. What a great spokesperson for this cause, and he's absolutely committed. I also thank Orrin Hatch, one of the original sponsors of the first DREAM Act, who recognizes that that's not a method that's going to produce an outcome. We've got to do things differently. So the Succeed Act, and I think we have collateral materials here. I don't know, Daniel, how many copies do we have? Okay, so we've got some we can pass around, but if you've got a pen, please get to the facts on what the Succeed Act is. It's a solution for undocumented children through careers, education, employment, and defending our nation. It's a bill that we put together that was loosely based on the RAC Act that Congressman Corbello had been working on, and we added things to it that, in my judgment, will get more people engaged and more likely to have the courage to vote on an enduring solution. And so we're working on that bill, but we really need help communicating what it does and does not do. And we're going to go through a negotiation process where some of the things may change. That's how you get to the votes you need to actually have something have the significance of law and something that the population that we're trying to help can rely on for the rest of their lives. And so if you go to my website, we'll leave the collateral materials here, but if you go to my website at tillis.senate.gov, and you go to legislation, you can click on Succeed Act, and you can get a copy of that PDF and some of the other collateral materials that we put out there, including the press conference we did a couple of weeks ago with Senators Langford and Senator Hatch. I think it's a good starting point. It's not easy, what we put forth, but I think it's reasonable. And I think it's something that will gain the confidence of members of Congress and the American people so that we can move on to the other matters that we need to move immediately to. Their guest worker programs, the illegally present population that's here, and a respectful, productive dialogue on how we solve this problem. I want to be a part of the Congress that solves this problem. We're at step one. Now, the other thing beyond what you'll see on our website that's critically important to the Succeed Act is a reasonable discussion on border security. Now, when I first approached the border security argument, it was more around homeland security, drug interdiction, human trafficking. That's really what I thought. What can we do to stem the tide and make sure that we're interdicting more drugs that are poisoning over 400,000 people over the last 15 or 20 years in this state? Poisoning, by that I mean they died through what I refer to as narcoterrorism, that are illicit drugs that came across either the northern or southern border. Incidentally, border security to me is not just about the southern border. It's also recognizing that the northern border needs to be addressed. So I signed on to a bill with Senator Cornyn, but I have to tell you the other reason, something that really became apparent to me when I was down in Texas for a week, and I went along various sectors talking to border security agents. But I think that was all very informative, and it really formed the basis for some of the things in Senator Cornyn's bill. Some things will probably be negotiated out. But I think what really I left with that I hadn't really thought about before is the humanitarian crisis that we have in the absence of a border, where we have people, technology, and infrastructure to know what's going on down there. I was at a ranch. I had dinner at a ranch in Falfurus, 7,500-acre ranch. By Texas standards, that's about a 1-acre lot in Mecklenburg County. Not very big. But over the course of, I think the number is 10 years, they recovered 100 corpses on that property, on that small ranch. So then I started asking about what had happened over the past 15 or 20 years. 10,000 people, almost 1,000 of them minors. If that's not a humanitarian crisis, I don't know what is. We need border security to know where people are so that we can at least save their lives. We need to have the situational awareness to know where human traffickers are carrying people over this border and will do horrible things to them at the other side of the when they make it here successfully. We need to have a better idea of where drugs are going across the border. In many cases, the vast majority in the land ports, that we need more people and technology to interdict. That's why I think if we have something that pairs these two fundamental policies together, I don't think any reasonable-minded person should object to it. Now, we've got the DREAM Act out there. I understand Senator Flake introduced a bill today. Look, this isn't about the Succeed Act, that title being codified into law. I don't care if it's my bill or somebody else's bill. I want the outcome. But what I will fight against is us falling into the trap that has led us to no outcome and uncertainty for this population that deserves an outcome. And that's where we need your help. We want a critical review and push back on anything you see in our bill. But I think if we set this threshold for this population, then it becomes a basis of discussion for any number of other topics, not the least of which is the remaining illegally present people in this country. If they're law-abiding, productive, loving human beings, we should come up with a compassionate, sustainable way to provide them with some certainty. If they're not law-abiding, then they should be in prison and they should be out of this country. It's that simple. And what do I mean by that? I mean significant misdemeanors and felonies. I think it's a reasonable expectation to have. And I'm big on criminal justice reform. I'm big on rehabilitation. We passed one of the most sweeping bills in the state for helping rehabilitate prisoners and get them back into society. And we want to do that for U.S. citizens. But I think that has to be table stakes to set a bar so that we build a bigger base of people who will start supporting immigration reform. And I, for one, just to be a selfish Republican, I want a Republican now to solve that problem because Democrats have had a shot. They had supermajorities. They had enough numbers in 2009 to pass something as profound and sweeping as Obamacare, and they didn't take this up. I want to be a part of that solution. I want a conservative, sustainable solution that does the right thing for this population. So I will tell you that those of you in North Carolina, I'd love to meet with you. I'm almost never in North Carolina. That's the worst part of this job. I mean, it really is. But I want you to know that my staff are really wedded to this personally. And so we want to meet with you. I mean, and excuse me. We want to meet with you whether you're in Charlotte or Raleigh or Greenville or up in Hendersonville or over in High Point. We want to meet with you. And we need your help. I mean, there are some well-intentioned people there that are so emotionally invested in it that we need to make sure that they understand that sometimes their heart isn't quite aligned with where their head needs to be so that we can produce an outcome. And there may be a few provisions that on its face you don't understand why they're there. I'm happy to sit down with you and tell you why, because I don't know how many things I do well, but I count votes really well. That's why I became Speaker of the House. And so I will tell you that most of my motivation beyond some of the core tenets of this bill are designed with an outcome in mind. And I'll leave y'all with this. This will probably drive my press guy crazy. But on this bill, I've told everybody, I've told a group, this was a year or so ago, or maybe it was earlier this year. You know, I said when I die, I'm going to be cremated. So on my cremation urn or a little plaque next to it, I want to have maybe 2 or 3 things. Father or husband, father, grandfather, rhino. Now, let me explain what I mean by rhino. To the far-right people who call me a rhino for supporting this bill, I say I am a rhino. But I've got a different definition on what a rhino is. I'm a Republican in need of outcomes. And those of you who are Democrats in this room, find dinos. Find Democrats in need of outcomes. And then we'll get together as what I call hippos. Highly independent people producing outcomes. Guys, it's time to check your differences at the door. It is time to provide a solution to this population. It is time for us to be persistent and patient and get this done. So thank you all for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your conference, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Senator Tillis, for your leadership on this issue and the zoology lesson. But we have to be an outcome-oriented group. We have to be a group that is willing to meet people where they are but not leave them there. We have to be a group that's willing to move things forward.